So hello you guys and welcome back to my channel. This is the first video in a series that I'm doing for Halloween. You guys know, if you've watched me for a while, I've been doing interviews for years. I do reaction videos, I do episode breakdowns, stuff like that. My whole channel is centered kind of around horror themed content, and Halloween is my favorite time of year. I don't play when it comes to Halloween. It is my time. So I thought it would be really fun to do a Halloween special where I talk to guests from classics, from Halloween or horror classics, things that I grew up watching at Halloween time, things that are super popular around this time of year. And when I started brainstorming for this series, The Lost Boys was honestly one of the first things that came to mind, because that was one of my first ever horror films that I saw. I would have been 11 or 12 when I was starting to get into horror films. So when I started brainstorming for the kind of guests that I wanted to have on for this series, The Lost Boys came to mind instantly, and the Frog Brothers came to mind instantly. One of my favourite aspects of The Lost Boys was always the Frog Brothers, because they were just so lovable. I loved the two of them. So today's guest is Jamison Newlander, who plays Alan Frog. We talked all things Lost Boys. We talked all things like nostalgia. He shared some really cool behind the scenes little stories and tidbits. And again, I sound like a broken record, but I always say it, this style of video is my favourite style of video to do, because you get to hear a little bit of the magic behind the projects that you love so much. So a big thank you to Jamison for sitting and talking and sharing so many lovely stories and just being so chill to sit and chat. It's always so gorgeous when you meet someone or you speak with somebody that you've known for years, that you've watched for years through a film or through a show or whatever, and they turn out to just be really chill and really nice. So yeah, let's get into it. Here is my chat with Jamison. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for being here and for agreeing to sit down and chat. But before we get into The Lost Boys and all of that, I really want to know, how did you get started in your line of work, and where did your love of film and acting come from?
Cool. So I'll say this. Let me see. Let me get in a better frame. There we go. Okay, so I was always one of those kids that was like performing needlessly. No, I mean, it was like at family functions and stuff like that, I'd be like the kid who was dancing around when everybody was there and they could watch. Like, I was kind of just naturally a performer. For better or worse, it was annoying to at times, but then it was actually like something that I was starting to get the hang of a little bit. And then by the time I was like 12 or 13, I was a bit awkward for a while. Like when I was about from like age like 9 to 10 or 11 or something like that, I was awkward, maybe even until 12. And then at some point I emerged as like not bad looking, like I got some confidence, and like I wasn't, I wasn't so I don't know, I wasn't as awkward, and then that kind of worked together. And my mom had this friend whose kid was going out on auditions. And that was like a thing in LA, it was like, it's probably a lot in a lot of cities now, but like back then it was LA was one of the only cities like that where your friends were like, you meet someone and they're like, oh, I have an agent, and they're going out for commercials, and you're like, oh, cool, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And so, and it was, sort of like the town business in a way. I mean, it was, but so so she had this friend, and her kid was going out on auditions, and she came over to the house and she was like, you got a really good look, you know. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so she helped me get an agent, and then I booked a commercial, which is a big deal in terms of like money. It's good money. And so that made it possible to have like pictures and acting classes and things like that. And then from there, I just had another agent to do theatrical, non-commercial work, um, and then it just was kind of, and that was only like a couple of years before Lost Boys. It seemed like forever. It seemed like I was doing it forever at the time, but it was really only at 14 that I booked that commercial for Pearl Vision. I don't know if you have Pearl Vision over there, but
Sounds like
it's only
toothpaste.
recently. What's that?
It sounds like toothpaste.
It's you know what? It could be a toothpaste, but it's glasses, Pearl Vision. You know,
Oh,
and so I don't know. So that's kind of how it happened.
so you're lucky that you were kind of in the LA area where, like you said, even like friends of friends would be going out for auditions.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because like it's completely different in Ireland. I mean, like if you
Yeah.
turn out to someone in Ireland, you go, I'm going to be an actor. All you get is good luck with that.
Yeah.
Um, but
Is
with
that's not changing at all? Like how there's film is more decentralized and stuff.
I mean, kind of. It has changed in the last like 10 years, I'd say. It's more with the like the help of social media. So with
Right,
like
right, right.
Twitter, TikTok,
Make-
YouTube,
Yeah.
anything like that, if you can garner somewhat of a following, it's kind of more easier for you to break into that. And then especially then with shows like Vikings and Game of Thrones, they did a lot of filming over here. And
Right.
it- we always knew when Vikings was filming because you would just see dudes everywhere, big long ass beards and their hair braided, and you're like, oh, Vikings must be filming because they need so
Awesome.
many extras. But yeah, it has gotten better in recent years, but it's still not LA, you know,
Yeah. Yeah,
sadly.
totally. And not LA in the 80s.
Yeah, true. Whenever I talk to anybody who's like into acting or like musicians, everyone kind of agrees that it was somewhat easier back in the 80s and 90s.
I would say this. I would say that I mean, I don't know what it's like for someone like a teenager now, or like someone who now who would was the age I was then.
Mm.
Um, so I can't say exactly. Although my kid's starting to be interested in acting, I have an 11-year-old who might kind of take the same path. Kind of right around now, start to get serious about auditioning and things. And but I think that my take, and maybe this is sort of like a little like, I mean, it might be glossing over it, but it might be like going to the heart of it, which is that I think in any era, it's hard. It's hard to differentiate yourself from the big crowd of people that want to make it. And it was hard then. It's just that it was hard in a different way. Like, I got lucky that I had this certain look. I got lucky that I got that commercial, that I had that my mom had that friend. It's like all of those things. If those are all things that, just on their own, these little luck things wouldn't have done it. But, of course, it has to do with also your perseverance and stuff like that, perseverance and talent, etc. But it's like, I think in any era, it's hard. And I think that it's probably, I would say it's probably not any harder now. It's just that um I don't know why it seems that way, but I don't think it's harder now. That's the bottom line. But I could be wrong. I could be wrong. This is also based on this idea that, like, when in the 80s, my mom, in the middle of all this, my mom, I was saying like, oh, cool, you had such cool music in the 50s. That was her era.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, and I was like, oh, you had such cool music. And she was like, you know, pay attention to the music now because there's some really cool music going on now. And I thought that was just really kind of with it of her to be able to say, like, and so I kind of like filter a lot of those things through that idea, which is that it's not necessarily better then. It's just that it seems like it, or in retrospect or whatever, hindsight, etc. You
It's
know.
funny that you bring up things like you brought up that story with your mom because I don't know what's been going on at me lately. I was born in 96, so I don't really remember the 90s, but
Sure.
lately all I want is the 90s music,
Uh-huh.
films, everything. And
Yeah.
like I have gotten caught up in the man, music and films were just better back then. You know
Right.
what I mean? Well, like everything modern is passing me by. And my brother had we had this exact conversation. He was like, pay attention to like the new
Oh,
releases,
really?
charts and stuff now. Yeah, this exact
Yeah.
conversation.
That's
Um,
cool.
and he's younger than me. My brother's only, I think he just turned 20. But with the Lost Boys, then with that coming along, how did you end up landing the role? Who were you with when you found out? And did you lose your mind? Or was it like, oh, we'll see how it goes?
Uh, okay, great questions. So I got Lost Boys because I was auditioning a bunch, and I think based on how it was going, impressing casting directors here and there. And so I had impressed you know, Marianne Doherty, who was the casting director who brought me into Lost Boys. And she was known for that kind of thing. Marianne Doherty was known for kind of discovering people. And so I got really close on this other film with her. And it didn't work out. They needed somebody who was over 18, so they didn't have to pay for school and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some films just can't do that. And it's like, But then when this came along, I had that good in with her, and so I was already kind of went in with that, with her on my side in a way. Plus, Joel Schumacher had just spoken in my acting class like a few months ago or a couple months ago or something like that. And so before this. And so it, obviously he had that connection with my teacher. I brought that up in the audition. It's like there was some good stuff that came into play. And also the fact that for some reason I keyed into, maybe I'll credit my dad with this, that they wanted military, but they wanted military, but the instinct was that it wasn't like grunge military. It wasn't like, this kind of military. It was like clean cut military, young kids, kind of thing. And
Yeah.
so I went in with the shirt that they have that I have in the movie with the dice on the sleeve.
Yeah.
I went in with that. That was my dad's army jacket, or they recreated it from that. And it's like, so already it's like all the pieces were kind of working, and they really dug that, and they really dug what they dug, I think, and also part of this is thinking in retrospect about what they might have been thinking, is that, Feldman is the pair of us together. Like I was kind of very serious. I was kind of a very serious, kind of overly serious actor, probably, which is something that I think they played off of. So I think all those pieces came into play, and it's like luck, the fortune, it's like the luck favors the prepared. It's like I was prepared. I was taking acting classes. I was out there. I was meeting people. I was, you know, hitting, doing well in casting sessions. So it's like, I'll take some credit for it, but also a lot of pieces, I was lucky that a lot of pieces came together.
So it's like the butterfly effect. Every small decision had a knock-on effect.
It's back on it, too, is that I was doing 100 push-ups a night. I was just talking about this on another podcast, actually, that like I had made this decision. It was probably having to, I'll give my cousin some credit on this, because he was like, just do 25 push-ups 4 times a night. That's all you got to do, And he was the same age as me. We were just trying it, and I tell you, I got pretty ripped. I mean, not ripped, but like I got to have a really good physique from that, and so it really came into handy in the room because he needed that. He didn't know what the Frog Brothers would be, but the Frog Brothers are a little ripped. Certainly, I was.
Mm.
And it's like Joel was like, "Are you built? Do you have a good physique?" And I was like, "Yeah, punch me." I just went in for the punch me thing, which, it's like all that kind of stuff plays in, that kind of cockiness, I think. So anyway.
I could definitely see why that would lend itself to working in your favor because it sounds in character for him.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
it's fucking nuts. Turn around and audition. Yeah, punch me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you don't know what you're gonna say in auditions. It's like it's
Yeah.
not like I'd love to think that I was so planned or that I could do that every time, but it's like you never know how it's gonna work, the chemistry and stuff, how it's gonna work.
Yeah, but
But
sometimes
it
that's when the best comes out, when you are just kind of flying by the seat of your pants and,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
totally. And and credit to Joel also that right from the audition and all through the filming, he made it fun. He made it fun. He was, he could be frustrated when you weren't getting it. It wasn't like he was just your friend. He was also a demanding director, but
yeah.
he had the ability to really make it fun and for us to understand what he was going for. So same kind, that played in too.
Must have been difficult for him in a way as well, because it was a younger cast and there's a lot of energy and personalities on set.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a whole like someone could study that, because for Lost Boys, I think he walked that line really perfectly. Like he was like he was like he was like an uncle. He was like a fun uncle, who was doing this cool stuff, and it was like bringing us in on this cool thing, kind of thing. And so it's hard in the sense that he, yeah, like all these different personalities, and with kids, like you can't just it's not the same as adults. You have to make it fun, I guess. They put a foosball table on the set when we were filming on the soundstage, and it was just like knowing knowing your people. And that's what we did whenever we weren't filming. We were all of us, me and Jason and the Coreys and Billy and Brooke. We were all playing foosball. You know what
That's,
foosball is, like that.
yeah,
That
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The little dudes on the table. Because I was going to ask
yeah.
that, like in between sets or in between takes, what would you get up to? Because there was so many of you, and a lot of the scenes were like big ensemble scenes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all kinds of things. I mean, up in Santa Cruz, I mean, I think they were prepared for that and they really kept us contained, certainly while we were filming, and we just, one of the things about a film set is that, especially when you've got all these awesome people who are talented and dedicated to the movie and also just fun, as it turned out, they were all fun, and not just the actors, the crew also, they were a lot of fun. And so it's one of those things where it's almost like the best times you can have because you're not trying to have a good time. You're not supposed to be having a good time. You're supposed to be working, but you have all this time where you're just hanging and chilling. And so it was, in that way, that's kind of, I guess, how we passed the time, as well as the foosball table.
God, that sounds incredible. And
It would
what's
be fun to like recreate that, all of us playing foosball for something.
oh my God, you should. People will go seriously crazy for that.
The idea actually.
What's one of your first scenes from being on set?
The first thing I filmed was the scene where like Haim runs out to get Nanook, and then he's running back and the vampires are coming,
Yeah.
and it was, as it turns out, that's also Chance's first shot that he did in the film. And it was probably like a good trial shot, because it wasn't too much pressure. We were all kind of doing the same thing. We were like, come on, get back here,
Yeah.
and like, try different things. Cool. Oh yeah. Oh no, all kinds of different things. And then they use what they use. And so it was like pretty low pressure, but yeah, so that was the first shot. And then, then another thing about, probably working with young kids is that they were so happy and adoring when it went well, which it always ended up going well. So it's like there was celebration almost after every shot, every good take that we got.
One of my favorite scenes, I watch this film every single Halloween. One of my favorite scenes always was the bat scene. So it's the scene where the two boys, they're rolling around the floor, they're screaming, the vampire gets knocked into the bat, it's anarchy. But like there's a lot like practical effects going on in that scene. You've got the
Yeah.
water, the blood water spraying everywhere. For scenes like that, was it like a one take thing going into it where you thought like, listen, you gotta get this right because we can't reset the scene. There's too much going on, or how many takes were you allowed?
You know what? It was both. We got that talk before the scene, like, guys, we got to explode these, things, and it's going to go over the walls and everything. We want to get it right on the first time. So we did. We got it right, but the color of the slime, it was in the tanks too long, and so it had turned a different color. It was like blue and white kind of thing.
Oh,
And yeah, and so for us, it wasn't, it was just like, okay, whatever, but they were like, we got to do it again. So so we went off to, I think, Richard Donner's office. We went and he had a shower in there, so it's like we took turns showering, you know what I mean, get back, new wardrobe. They clear it. In the meantime, they're clearing everything. We get back in there, we shoot it again. The slime comes out of the tanks, but they had put too much red in to kind
oh
of
my
compensate.
God.
So it was looked like The Shining. It looked like blood everywhere, and they were like, and it's a little insight too. It's into his talks about what the movie was going to be, because he was like, I promised the studio that I wouldn't have gore, like this. So that was interesting to note. And so same thing, off to Richard Donner's office. They clean it all up, and then it went right, and then they got it right, and I think we got it right every time. Me and Feldman, for what it's worth. Not that there was that much to do, but just like freak out. But and then but then there was something, and I can't remember how it worked out, but my least favorite experience on the movie was that scene, because we had to sit in the slime between takes. There were
Oh,
some scenes that we were really in slime, deeply in slime. Maybe even those takes didn't make it, but like a few inches deep of slime, and we were just sitting there while everybody was, because you can't like send us out, like so we're just sitting there while they're readjusting the lights and everything like that. It was so gross. And And I thought that I was kind of overplaying that a little bit. And then I mentioned it to Feldman, and he said, "Yeah, it was that was." He was like, "It was the grossest thing."
Because
Yeah,
I wondered that every time because you can see like it's thick and it's almost it looks kind of like slush puppy but thicker. You
yeah,
know?
right, right. Yeah, that's like it was like that by slush puppy. I mean, it was like the slime that you get in those little trash cans.
Yeah, gooey
Yeah,
things.
I think it's the same formula. It smelled like the same thing, and then some glitter. They put glitter into it.
Glitter into it.
There was glitter in it, yeah, so that it would pick up the light. It was so if you so the the Twilight folks, who are like because there's that thing like real vampires don't what glitter, yeah. So
Yeah.
technically,
Oh,
yeah.
I remember. I remember the Vampire Wars. I will admit, okay, I loved Twilight. I still do. I can't help it. I was a teenage girl when the Twilight craze began, and I
Oh yeah,
remember that back and forth of like real vampires don't sparkle. Um,
right. Don't sparkle, yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, it's the don't sparkle. So, so what was your favorite scene then? Because I would have thought that one like that, like one that was real kind of messy and that you're really hands-on in would have been.
Yeah, I mean, what's fun is that the ones that are fun to watch aren't necessarily the ones that are fun to do as much, I guess. I mean, like where it's like, oh yeah, a lot of people say that, like, oh, that must have been really fun to film, and it's like, actually, not necessarily talking about that scene but other stuff, and being like, actually, that was real pain to shoot, actually.
Mm.
The stuff for me that was the best was the comic book store stuff, because we were up in Santa Cruz. It was like the beginning of the shoot, but it was all going so well. Everybody was so happy with it, and you know um there was just a real good confidence going into it. And it was like, if you think about it, you know, that scene that we did up in the on the porch, that I was just talking about, other than that and a couple other little things, we were really creating the Frog Brothers in those scenes, in those comic book store scenes. And we didn't know what we were making. You know what's on the page, you know what you're trying to do. Joel is telling us to go watch Chuck Norris and Charles Bronson and all the action heroes. He's like, you guys are that's what you are. You're those guys. You're action heroes. So you know, so that's how I got that tough, like just like no nonsense tough thing going on. It was like from Chuck Norris and from those guys who are just like they're just angry. Those guys are just angry enough that you just don't want to mess with them. And so so that kind of stuff. And but how's it all going to come together? What's it going to be like? We didn't know that there was going to be this cool thing where he's rounding the corner and then all of a sudden there's nobody in the shop anymore and we're following him. We don't know that it's going to be as cool as that, but so that's what I think was most fun for me.
When you first saw the film, because I'd say a lot of it was filmed out of order, and there's probably a lot of scenes that you weren't in. Was it how you imagined, or was it like, whoa?
You know what? It was a lot of things. Like it was, I didn't quite realize that the vampires were going to be as major a part of it as they were, like, I know that seems odd, but like on the page, it sort of seems like the relationship with the brothers, and then us, and then there's and it's all the backdrop of the vampires. But I didn't quite realize they were going to go for the vampire thing so intensely. I didn't realize that Kiefer. I didn't really watch them filming those scenes with Kiefer and the vampires in the cave and stuff. I saw a little bit of that stuff, but I didn't see like the really awesome intense stuff. Like sitting there with the wine, and that chair with the lights coming down on Kiefer. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing stuff. And I had no idea. I thought it was a little bit. I was thinking it was more of like the story of the two families, of our two families, of and in fact, it was about those three families, including the vampire
I
family.
think that might be two of my favorite things I've heard in a long time. Hearing, I didn't know
Yeah,
the vampires would have such a big part in the vampire film, and also what you said a while ago about that it wasn't supposed to be gory, or that you did the
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you look at like in a lot of ways, it wasn't the that scene on the beach. I think was probably really there was a lot of hand wringing over that scene. I mean, I'm sort of guessing, but I knowing what was going into it because they were. Jason was just telling me recently, or he was on a panel talking about this recently, that a lot of the script wasn't. They didn't know what they were going to do. They didn't necessarily know that it was going to go that way. They were writing it all along, and that scene, if you think about it, before that scene, it's not really much gore.
Yeah.
that scene is really intense. And then after that, even the kills, I guess the in the bathtub is pretty gory. Yeah, because that's
Yeah.
pretty gory. Yeah.
It is a little bit with the blood spraying all over the house and the boys
Yeah,
getting covered in it a small bit.
and Brooke with like burn holes in his face and stuff.
Oh God, yeah.
Right. So I guess that level, but I think they were. It was a. I think if you would, I think they could have gone more gory, and then it might have been a turnoff to the audience. Like with the beach scene, where he's like, initiation's over, which is one, of course, one of my favorite scenes, like so pivotal in the movie. I think where it's like, oh, cool, you're part of this group. That's cool. Oh, oh no, oh no. These guys are vampires. Like, and it's not just like, oh, cool, vampires. It's like you have to tear up people and eat them. It's like, so it's like that scene had to be gory.
Yeah. I never actually thought about it that way, that there isn't a whole lot of gore in it when you think about it compared to more modern horror films or even horror films from the time. Gore wasn't really an essential part of
Yeah,
it.
yeah. That's what's kind of interesting about it. It's like
Yeah.
that's why I think it ends up being like a gateway horror movie for kids. I find this at conventions a lot of like. When did you get into Lost Boys?
I would have been about 11 or 12.
Yeah, a lot of kids get into 11 or 12. I've even seen like 5, 6, 7 year olds who are into horror because their parents are into horror, and Lost Boys is a big feature of it because
Yeah.
yeah, there's that beach scene and stuff, but it's still otherworldly enough or something. I don't know. It's
No,
not
I
quite
think you're
as
right. I think you're right with that. It is because I know when I started, I'm super into horror now, obviously. But when I started, my dad was like, yeah, let's go because he loves horror. My mom was like, no, we'll start her with some of the kind of easier ones. So I started in with The Lost Boys, and I think I watched Dracula as well, Bram Stoker's
yeah.
Dracula.
There you go.
But the
Yeah,
rules were you have to watch it during the day and you have to watch it with me, my mom. And I
smart.
remember
Yeah,
sitting,
smart.
I remember watching The Lost Boys, sitting, being like, okay. Okay. And when it got to kind of more gorier parts, she was there with like the remote in her hand, like, do you want me to skip it? Will I skip it? And I was like, no, I'm fine. I think that's when she realized, oh no, there's something wrong with my child.
Right. Yeah, yeah. She's going the way of her dad.
Yeah.
Or you got those genes, the
Yeah.
horror gene.
Oh, definitely. Because my dad, my granddad, my dad's dad, I think he liked horror, but my dad's grandfather was big into like the old school horror, like the silent picture films.
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's legit old.
Huge. And my dad
Old.
always told me stories at like Halloween time that he'd go over to his granddad's house and they'd watch all night long the silent picture ones, which he tried to get me into. And I was like, Dad, there's no
Yeah.
blood or guts or nothing.
Right. Like at the time, it was probably like amazing. It was
Terrifying.
right,
Yeah.
terrifying, and also like what they were used to seeing. It was like probably was incredible.
Yeah.
Now it's like we built on that. We've been building on that for 100 years, really.
But then going from the original Lost Boys then and jumping forward in time, I think it was nearly 20 years or around the 15-year mark. There was the sequel and there was also the third installment, which I loved, The Thirst.
Excellent,
I
excellent,
loved the third one. But
awesome.
for you stepping back into the same role, that must have been trippy. It must have been weird trying to get back into the mindset after however many years.
Yeah, it's funny. There was so much talk about it happening for like years. I mean, also the whole time there was talk about it happening, the whole ever since the original came out. But I mean, the really intense part when they were really gearing up toward two, toward the tribe, and then that happened, and then they were really gearing up toward the thirst, and it was like there was a moment where I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to play this part. I'm gonna have to go back and figure out what I was doing or whatever, and figure out not just what I was doing then, but what my character might have been up to for the last 20 years. I think it was about 20 years because I remember talking about it with Feldman like that. He was actually the one who sort of brought it into perspective. I think he asked me that question. It was like, what do you think? So what do you think your characters has been doing for 20 years and brought him to today? And so that was interesting. That was cool. Ultimately, it came back like riding a bike, kind of like once I got into it. Um, it was also a little tricky where this another situation where the script was kind of in flux in the thirst, like that scene, the where I'm the taxidermy scene
Oh
in the
yeah.
thirst. It's like the it was written kind of differently, and it was really on set that day um that it changed to that. And that's really hard. That's really hard because, there's a lot of pressure in trying to to recreate or, to like live up to the past performance and everything. And then to have that kind of curveball where you're sort of trying to remember the lines at the same time was really tough. And I remember being really bummed out, actually, now that I think about it, after doing that scene. So much so that the producer came up to me and he was like, listen, I heard you're bummed out about that scene. And I was just like, I just don't know if we got it. I don't know if we got, I was just so worried about lines and this and that. And he was like, listen, I want to reassure you. We could see that in the takes, but we really got a good one. We really printed a good one. And I was like, cool. That's all you got to say. Like, I'm cool. Like, all I wanted was to be able to deliver it. It's like, so it was scary for a little while, for like a day until that producer talked to me.
It must be hard though that if you read something on the page and then it changes, or even small alterations between script and like actual filming, it must throw you for a loop big time.
It's really hard. I mean, it's part of the job, really. It's sort of like in an ideal world, like I studied theater after Lost Boys. I went to college and studied theater, and it's the ideal world. The ideal scenario is that you know your lines so well that you don't have to think about it. So it's like emotions can come up, you can ride the emotions however they are in that relationship. The lines are there, and it's incredible to do that. That's like something you can do as a theater actor, because the lines are the same. Very rarely they're going to change them that much after it opens. They still do actually, but not to the extent. In something, what's really scary for me is something like that, or like soap opera. I've heard, I never did soap opera, but something like that where you just got the script like that night, and or the night before, and you've got like, I had a friend who was on One Life to Live, I think, and he got the script and it was like 20 pages of dialogue, that he'd had to know by the next day. And, and they had teleprompters and stuff too. So, that's a little different. But anyway, that's really hard. And it's part of the job, but it's not my favorite part.
I would be able to handle the stress of that, definitely.
Yeah. And it's like, I guess the thing is, it's like you got to do what you got to do. It's like you're on the spot. The lines are the lines. These days, also, someone just told me that I was talking to an actress and she said that she doesn't worry about the lines that much these days because they can just tell you to like say it a little differently. I don't think that would work for me, but it's maybe not as much of an issue these days.
But I imagine when you've so many different things going around in your head, though, when it comes to like trying to, like you said, remember the lines, trying to remember to actually act in the moment, not just like regurgitate what's on
Right.
the page.
Yeah.
And
That's the
then,
hardest part, to like actually be able to turn that corner where it's actually creating it.
yeah. But if there's a take that you're not happy with, or if there's something that you're like, I really think I could do that again, like how much generally, or at least in your experience, how much creative liberty would you be given that, you could maybe have another shot at something?
I think like thinking back to Lost Boys and that era, I would say you could request it, but if you were always requesting it, I think they'd start being like, no, sorry. you know.
Yeah.
Certainly like a Jason Patrick and Corey Haim, like if they were doing it and they were like, no, Joel, we want to do it again, like I'm sure it would be no problem to do it again. With me, where it's like I wasn't a star at that point, and there were other stars, that I was working with, it would have been cheeky, I think, for me to cheeky. I don't know if you guys use that term over there anymore. you know, but I think it would be pretty gutsy for me to always be requesting another take. And I
Yeah.
think that's then. Now, a couple of movies I've done like the last couple of years, there's no time. There's no time. They get it. They get what the few gigs I've done. You're not nailing it, but you're nailing it enough that they have what they need and they can go. And that's that. They're moving on.
Hang on just a second. You're freezing a little bit. You're kind of
Okay. You froze
jumping.
one time.
Yeah, I can't tell if that's me. Hang on. I just have
Is
something
my internet? It says your internet connection is unstable. Is that me?
that could
Let me.
be you. I was wondering, is it me? Because I know we have a storm coming in at the weekend, but that's 2 days away. Hang on. I have something running in the background. I'll just force quit it and see if that makes a difference. But staying on to the thirst then. There was fight scenes that I really loved towards the end. It's all of you are just like you're just kicking the ever loving hell out of each other. And with scenes like that are so technical, how much of that would be choreographed that you would have to learn versus like stunt doubles that could step in when you're like, okay, I've had enough.
Yeah. So what's cool is that I got to do some of the stunt work on the Thirst. I was they taught me the whole fight. So and it was cool because I'm actually kind of good at that kind of thing for a layman on the fight front. I'm like I studied it in college, and I'm pretty good. Like I'm a decent dancer, so like I can kind of my body moving through space, I can kind of deal with it. And it's like I was really kind of getting like cheers on the set and stuff, and practicing, and like the moves of like spinning around with the blades and everything. It was awesome, so cool. And then we got to set one morning, and they were like, they had the stunt double do it. They had the stunt, like they were there before us. They were like they filmed it all with the stunt team, and I was like, cool, that's cool. That's cool. You know, there were a couple things that I did that got in there, and also I got to fly for a second. That that the one moment or one of the moments I actually got to fly, and it was interesting. Like I remember doing it, and I was kind of like feeling it out, and then they were like, "Can you make it look like you're flying?" Like, and I looked at the take, and it was just me, just like sort of like standing there lifting up. Like, okay, okay. So I like start to do more like that. I didn't. It's fun. It's fun. I got to do that much, but yeah, I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, that's awesome. You filmed it. That's great.
And for the flying scene, what was it? It was wires. Was it around your waist, like a thing you get belted into?
It was definitely wires. I think it was a whole harness. Like I think it was like a whole thing across my whole chest and stuff and back, and yeah, it was wires. Yeah, or one wire, something like that. Yeah.
And you got, like you just said, you got to fly, obviously, because you got to experience being a vampire in this one.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. That's right.
Everyone always talks about the fangs and trying to talk with like fangs in, but I want to know, what was it like with the contacts? Could you see anything? Because they looked thick and chunky.
Yeah, so a couple things. They were not anywhere near as bad as the ones that they had to wear in the original. I've heard some stories about those. Like, Alex Winter, all the Lost Boys,
Yeah.
those the ones they wore were like cutting edge, like new technology, and it was awful. Like they couldn't wear it for more than like 10 or 20 minutes at a time. It was like but fortunately I didn't have that. I had the kind that I had in the taxidermy scene, where I turn like that. Those were just regular contacts, and they were like, just I didn't feel them at all. It was just like having regular contacts. I think they even made them my prescription, which is really sweet of them. And then and also probably smart, right? For safety reasons. But then there were others, the ones that I wore in the scene that I turned, where I got, you know, um, I mean, we're giving most of it away, whatever. Anyway, but those were really they were like just putting a thing of rubber on my eyes. Like it was those are the ones you're probably thinking of that were really
Yeah.
chunky, and I actually did a stunt with that. Now that I think about it, is I had to kind of jump out the window or something like that, and I couldn't see, but I was like I could do it. I could see enough to do it, and as I look back, like I probably shouldn't have done it. I was just being like, yeah, totally, I could do it, but they should have like been like, listen, don't do it. Like it's not like it was that dangerous, but there was no reason for me to do it. The stunt team was right there. Maybe I was like, no, no, I
I
want to do
got
this now.
this.
You guys, you took that away from me. No,
I mean, it would have been absolute gold if you had like missed and run into a wall or something. It would have been very Frog Brother like. They could have been like, put it in. Oh my God, golden. Keep that
yeah,
shot.
exactly. I'm arguing with them, being like, no, no, don't put it in. It's gonna make me look,
And they're
no,
like,
but
it's ready in the
they would have.
cut.
But it's true, yeah. That Frog Brothers thing of like,
Yeah.
just a little bit goofy. Like we were just a little bit too, not to us, but to other people.
That was their charm though. There was something so lovable about the two of them, true, like even true to the thirst. They always kind of kept that essence. Even Alan, I mean, I was shocked when he turned. I was like, oh God, because I didn't know what way it was gonna go. I was like, I don't know if his brother will let him live. Like, I don't, you know what I mean? But
Right? Yeah,
he
that's
still
scary.
kept the essence of his character, even while a vampire.
Right. That's great. That's it. That's interesting. I'm happy to hear that. That's cool.
I wanted to touch very briefly on the very last fight scene that the two brothers had to have it out together. That has to be one of my absolute favorite vampire kills. You have um you have Edgar up the wall. I think you're holding him by the throat or something, and I think it's the head vampire that you're trying to kill comes in behind you, and I think he cuts a wire and he sprays it onto him, and the
Right.
vampire just kind of looks at him and goes like, okay, and it's not until he starts blissing him then he starts sizzling. I've never
Right.
seen that done.
Right. Right. That I thought was really clever. Really, hats off to Corey and also to Hans Rodnoff, who was the writer, who I think together I think they came up with that.
That was genius because I've seen a lot of vampire films and I've never seen like holy water like in real time. I
Yeah,
thought that was
totally.
great. But I was wondering
Yeah,
what
that's
was
the thing is finding something that you haven't seen before. That's the exciting thing. Like you were saying earlier.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. No, I was just gonna ask what was one of your favorite vampire kills that either you did or you saw?
I'm trying to think. I For some reason I wish I could come up with something not in Lost Boys. Just to be like cool about it. Be like, oh yeah, my actually my fire kills and something else. But I have to say that killing of Marco in the first Lost Boys, not necessarily how it was done. It was just pretty straightforward. But first of all, how it was pulled off, I thought it was pulled off really well. But also that that moment when you're like, holy shit, these guys, these guys are serious. Like, that's what I think was like a moment where you're just like, he's gonna do it. Like, like, oh
Yeah,
man, he's really gonna do it.
he's going for
And
it.
so I think that's pretty cool.
And I like how they played it off too, that even though they were like terrified and absolutely scared shitless, they still did it.
Yeah,
Again, it's
totally.
the charm of them. I love it. I love them so much. But moving on then a little bit from the Lost Boys,
Uh,
given the fact that you're in it, can you and do you watch your own projects, or are you the kind of person that's like, yeah, I don't want to see me.
you know what? I'm the opposite. I watch myself over and over and over again. And some of it, well, I've gotten it's kind of an instinct that I can key into now, having experience doing it, which is that if I'm watching it to scrutinize it, then I'll stop.
Mm,
But to I will watch things to celebrate it as well. To sit there and look at, especially after I know that people like it. If people are like, "Great job on that role. I love that whatever they're talking about." And then I'll look at it and kind of with that understanding, and I'll kind of celebrate it a little bit. I'll listen to it. I'll be just sort of like, maybe like a little like patting myself on the back in a, I like to think not in a proud way, but in a kind of just a loving way. Like, awesome, we did it. Like I pulled that moment off, kind of thing.
you should definitely do that in a proud way. You're in one of the biggest horror films probably of all time. I'd be patting myself on the back every morning I wake up. I'm like, you did that. Good for you.
I
Um,
do that. It's like, it's with Lost Boys, I was looking at that scene, the comic book store scene, and for a long time I was thinking that I was stiff at the beginning. I was like, I'm kind of stiff, like with like for a fashion victim and only five in existence and stuff like that. And I was like, because I was a little bit, that was the first major stuff that we filmed, that was like really scene stuff.
yeah.
And but as I looked at it more recently, as an example of just like continuing looking at something, I was like, you know what? I think it's cool that it makes him more tough. I think it makes Alan more tough. Like you don't know what's up with it. Like what, you know, I don't know. So it's an example of me looking closely at my performance and being like, yeah, cool.
Like touching on the Halloween aspect of things and like this time of year, obviously. What are some films that you gravitate towards that you're like, I gotta watch it this time of year every year?
Okay, so I often say that one of my favorite horror films is The Omen. I don't watch that regularly, but I really do think that movie. I just watched all of the Poltergeists again, all three of them, because just like there's, I don't know if there's there's like very at times various possibilities for a fourth. Hopefully, I'd love to jump in on something like that. But I just rewatched them and remembered that I love Poltergeist 2 specifically. All of them I think are brilliant, but Poltergeist 2 especially is something that I love. Again, it's not something I watch every year, but I dig that. Also, the original Friday the 13th is
Yeah.
was really scary for me, like, and yeah, so I think I even saw it at camp actually, and so it was like extra scary,
Bold
and
move. Whoever put that on at
right.
camp.
I know. I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, it just made it. It's like telling ghost stories. Might as well put this on. Get everybody freaked out if it's the right crowd, I guess.
Yeah.
But
Very
yeah,
immersive. It's like 3D. Look outside. You're in the camp.
yeah, it's like there they are.
Yeah. Mostly
Halloween 2
filmed.
also, by the way, I loved Halloween 2.
Just the second one?
The franchise in general. I don't know that I've seen all of them, but in general, I dig the franchise. But it was the second one particularly that I saw. I'm sure it was the circumstances I saw it in, whatever. But I particularly dug it.
That's the one in the hospital, isn't it? We start off in the hospital.
Yeah, Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's right. Then there was a lot of it in the hospital. I'm trying to remember, but yeah, yeah, totally. We're like, yeah, the where you're just like, get move, get run faster.
Yeah. Why are you going upstairs? You should be going
Yeah,
out the door.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But a lot of the films you mentioned, they have remakes, like Friday the 13th, Poltergeist, The Omen. How do you feel about remakes? Are you like a yeah, let's go, or
I think I'm agnostic on the remake thing because, like I was in a remake, I was in the Blob, and it's like the Blob as cool as the one was in the 50s, like I thought it elevated it to make a sequel, as biased as I am. I mean, not a sequel, a remake.
yeah.
Um, and so, I think it can work. I think, of course, when it's spawned from laziness, of just not wanting to find other projects, that's like, look, I'm sure there's a lot of cool projects out there, and I understand the concept of a brand and how people gravitate to that brand, and you want to build off that brand and stuff. But I also think that also can kill things, thinking like that. It certainly can kill artistic inspiration and creativity and stuff. And I was talking about that with even things like this haircut place I used to go to. It was awesome. And then, then they took it over, corporate, a corporate thing took over. And now I can't go there. It's absurd. It's cookie cutter kind of thing, and I think the same thing can happen with film. Um, and I think that, so, you know what I mean? So I'm nuanced and agnostic. I think it can work. And certainly the Lost Boys, I wasn't against the Lost Boys remake that was happening. Did you know about that? Right, there was supposed to be a Lost Boys
I
remake.
heard like whispers of it, but I didn't know if it was ever confirmed or not. I remember it coming up.
I I never know what was real. I never talked to anybody specifically about it. A lot of people were like, "No, it's happening," but I think it isn't happening, either anymore or maybe it never was. I can't quite tell. But I'm not totally against it.
Yeah, I mean it's funny. It's a weird one because I'm the same mindset of you of a remake for the sake of a remake can come across as a bit shit sometimes.
Right.
But like
Right.
for example, like with Interview with the Vampire, I probably am in the minority with this, but I wasn't a huge fan of the original film.
I wasn't either. I
Yeah,
wasn't.
like I
Yeah.
saw
I
it
love the book, the first
when I
book.
was a kid and was like, it's okay. But they
Yeah.
recently remade that into a show, and it is stunning. It is absolutely divine. The cast is crazy off the charts, and then that opened the door to me to all the Anne Rice books. I went back and read them all, and I've watched the
Yeah.
film. I have a new appreciation for it. So yeah, I'm kind of split with the two. I do think if they were to do like a maybe a limited mini series or something for the Lost Boys. I think that could be cool. Bring in some of the original
Yeah.
cast members.
Yeah. Feldman and I are trying to get a Frog Brothers show made, like which would kind of maybe achieve that, where it's like, on the heels of a Cobra Kai, where it's like it's a
Yeah.
continuation of the story, but in a different sort of way. And it's about the Frog Brothers, but we can bring in other people. I mean, Laddie, he's an awesome actor, Chance Corbett. And it's like we could bring him in. He could totally have an arc. Jason's character is still alive if he were down for, he's
Mhm.
talked about being open to it. I don't think he really wants to mess with it because it's such a it's good work and it's an iconic role and it's iconic film and everything. So we'll see, but I think that would be a cool solution to do it that way.
Definitely. And especially because you mentioned Cobra Kai. Definitely. I adored the Karate Kid films. And when Cobra Kai was announced, I was like, I wasn't sure how to feel. I
Right.
love it. But like that, it
Right.
doesn't mess with the original material. It doesn't,
Yes. Right.
it's
Right.
it's like a separate entity, but then there's faces you know and love, and it brings back the nostalgia, but in a modern way. So yeah, I think a
Oh,
Frog Brothers, even a mini series with Frog Brothers could work so well.
yeah. I'm gonna get back serious about that again. It took a backseat to some other things,
Hmm.
and it was hard to come up with what the actual concept would be, but it's starting to come clear in my mind. I think I'm gonna get back to that.
You should, dude. I think a lot of people out there would really, really love it.
In fact, I think when I'm at Chiller, I'm going to be at Chiller convention later this month in October. It's in New Jersey in October 25th to 27th. And I was thinking about making a little booth where you could like tell Warner Brothers why you would want there to be a Frog Brothers show. It'd be kind of fun, that you could sit down,
That would be cool.
wouldn't that be cool?
That
I would
would be cool.
participate.
It's funny, I was going to ask you about conventions as well, because obviously when especially for the original Lost Boys, I maybe there was conventions, but like back in the 80s, it was very difficult. Well, I imagine it was very difficult to get in contact with like any of like the stars from your favorite films or your favorite shows. Nowadays, I feel like you guys are a lot more accessible. I mean, DMing or Zoom calls
Right.
with conventions. So what's it been like for you kind of with this new wave? Because the Lost Boys, I'm pretty sure in was it last year or the year before? The Lost Boys had a huge resurgence on, I think it was TikTok. It was all over my For You page. So
Yeah,
what's it
it's
been
just
like for you?
so for us, well, for me, I mean, for us, but me, it's amazing. Starting the convention thing was amazing for us because it's all theoretical otherwise. I mean, I'm not recognized walking down the street. I, when I know people or when I meet people and they know that I'm a Frog Brother, they love it. Most people, when if they've seen it, they love it. And they're like, what? That's awesome. But it's not the kind of thing that happens all the time. So conventions are awesome because we get to see the impact of the movie. We get to see people who tell us that, like what you're saying, like they've been watching the movie since they were kids. People who would go out and play Frog Brothers, in the woods together, with their brother or their friend or their sister, whatever. And
Yeah.
and it's like those things are so incredible for us, for me to hear because I was just trying to do my best in this movie, and like trying to deliver what I could to this piece. And so that's what's been really amazing and magical for us. It's also been cool as I'm getting back to acting really full time. I'm now back to acting full time. I had a couple kids and I still have them, but they're older, 11 and 16. And so uh, you know, um, I'm back, but so I had a kind of a real job for a while and a real, like whole parallel kind of life for a while. But the conventions are allowing me to go back to acting full time, where it's like, getting parts here and there, and doing some conventions kind of rounds it out. So it's really amazing for me.
And have you, I assume you have, you get to catch up with some of the other lads, some of the other cast from the film?
Yeah, well, oh yeah, that's the other great part of it is that these are all really good friends. At this point, like um, Chance, I mentioned, we just did a convention together. And it's just like, it's great. It's like we get to have a weekend of just hanging out all weekend. We're hanging out either at the tables, especially if it's a good show and there's a lot of people we're meeting and stuff, and even if it's not, if we have more downtime, that's great. Jason, I've gotten to know him as an adult, and I said to him, I was like, I'm still going to think of you as an older brother sometimes. Like I'm kind of trying to break out of that, because he was like an older brother to me. And he was like, no, I'm not going to let you break out of that. I still want to be, like, what I mean? Which is sweet, you know. And Billy and Brooke and Corey Corey Feldman, and then Haim when he was alive, and Brooke when he was alive. We had amazing times, with this. And so it was a gift in that way. I was going to say about the conventions, by the way, is that I think of it as like the circus, like the circus coming to town. Like, back like whatever, 100 years ago, whenever the circus was big, like,
Hmm.
you wouldn't see an elephant. You couldn't see it. You wouldn't, most people never saw an elephant, and, and so to see like these elephants dancing, coming to your town, I feel like it's the same way. Like in celebrities, we were just people on TV. We were people that weren't accessible, that you wouldn't meet. And now we can come, with the convention. It's like the circus coming to town. We roll in and you get to, not that we're animals, but performers, that are like you get to meet us as people, not just as performers.
No, I totally get that because I I've loved going to conventions for years. It's one of my favorite things to do. And even though
Yeah.
you know what you're in for, you buy your ticket, you buy your photo op, whatever it is, you know what you're in for. You walk into the room and still you're like, oh my God, oh look over there, look who it is. And it's like you said, I think it's just because there's so much like energy and so many people in the one room that it's like it's overwhelming. Have you ever
Yeah,
have
and
you ever come across someone at a con that starstruck you that had you like, oh,
it does happen. It happened a little bit with. It happens in random ways. Like first of all, I just met Fonzie. Henry Winkler,
Yeah.
amazing. That was a really an amazing feeling because Fonzie was, I mean, central to my life from I don't know what age, 4 or 5,
Mm.
all my life. Just so that got me a little starstruck. Um, even you ever the show What's Happening?
Yeah.
So I watched that a lot as a kid, and it was actually also a really I've thought about it as a really culturally important show for me because Watts, where it took place, was thought to be a war zone. I mean, a war zone. Just a lot of violence there, and it was probably overblown and not fair to, to give that impression. And
Mm.
so for that show to come out and to show these were just kids, it was just kids, just neighborhoods, families, same thing. And it was important, I think. And so that, and also it was the only thing that was on a lot of times, it was like those shows that was just on all the time. And so I met those guys a few months ago at the Burbank convention, and that really kind of blew me away, actually, seeing those guys.
Especially if you're watching since a kid, or a child
Yeah, yeah,
memories that it's really like ingrained in.
yeah. Where it becomes like these are people you were hanging out with, people who whatever, we all have troubles as kids. I mean, I was troubled in the way kids were, like stressing about this or that, or caught up in something that was like you learn later in life you shouldn't get caught up in, your mind, and stuff like that. And like those shows like helped us out of that stuff. Those are like our buddies, that we would hang out with. I mean, for me, and I've heard that from other people, that kind of thing from other people. So they just meant so much to us.
I totally get that. And you do feel like they become almost like background characters in your life if it's a comfort show or a comfort film that you become so used to their faces or voices. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
The Friends cast too. If I haven't really hung out with them, but if I met them, I would probably be starstruck.
Friends, did you say Friends?
Yeah, I watched Friends like it was right. It was those are my people. Like talking about
Dude.
your friends. That was the whole message, right? You too.
Yeah. Well, I was a bit young, but my parents got into Friends. So then by
Yeah,
proxy, I had to watch Friends because it was what
of
was
course.
on.
Right.
But yeah, I started watching like by myself, young teen years, and to this day, 9 times out of 10, I'll put on an episode of Friends going to sleep just as
That's how
background.
I'm too. That's how I'm too.
Yeah.
Not just go to sleep, but like if there's nothing I can think of I want to watch and I want to have something on, Friends.
Yeah. No, I think I'd probably cry or pass out if I met any of them because it
Right.
feels like you know them. Yeah.
Yeah. One person I saw in person was Matthew Perry. Matthew Perry, that's his name, right? The one who
Chandler?
passed. What?
Chandler, Matthew
Oh,
Perry.
Chandler, yeah, Chandler,
Yeah.
yeah. Matthew Perry, right? Yeah. Uh, I saw him, but I didn't meet him. He was like at a cafe in West Hollywood, and I was passing by, and I was like, that's Chandler right there.
I love the way you can just casually say things like that. Like, I was walking by a cafe in like
It does
California.
happen. That's what's trippy. It really does happen. I mean, of course, not just LA, but yeah, in LA, it happens so much that it's not that big a deal.
I'm from Ireland and nothing like that. Well, that's a lie. I met Killian Murphy. You know Killian Murphy?
No.
Accidentally once in a comic book shop in Dublin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I was trying to look at something. He walked out in front of me. You know Killian Murphy, right?
I mean, I probably do. I'm not connecting the name though. What
Peaky Blinders.
I
He's
didn't
the lead
didn't.
guy in Peaky Blinders. He was in Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay, okay. I got you. Yes, of course.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge actor. This was pre all that. Way before all that. But I went to LA a few years ago, about 2 years ago, I think. Spent a week there, and whenever anyone would hear the accent, straight away I'd get, "Where are you from?" And I'd be like, "Oh,
Uh-huh.
I'm from Ireland. I'm from Limerick." And then you
Yeah.
get, "Have you met anyone yet?" And
Oh,
but like,
really?
the
Interesting.
fourth person that asked me that, I was like, "Seriously, what? Who am I supposed to be meeting?" And they were like, "Keep your eyes open." There's like they like the hotel staff told me, people in like shops told me, they were like, "You don't know who you see." So I'm sure I walked
Yeah.
around the streets looking like a freak.
So did you end up not seeing anybody still?
No, no one.
Funny. It's funny because like, sometimes I'll meet people these days. I'll pretty early on volunteer that I mean, if I get to talking to somebody, I'll tell them I was in a movie in the '80s, and then
Mm.
from there they can, if they're interested, they'll find out that I was Frog Brother, and so that happens in LA, that kind of stuff. I even ran into Feldman in LA. I mean, we see each other in LA, but a number of years ago we were in Ralph's in the supermarket, and there he was. And we were like, we took selfies and everything. It was fun.
I've kept you long enough, but just before we go, I have a very short round of trivia that now I think might actually be useless because most of the questions I heard the answers given accidentally throughout the interview. So now I'm like, shit, he's gonna know the answers. I was really banking on you not knowing them.
Maybe in a quick way, we can see how quickly I can nail him or something like that.
Okay, first one. Name the 4 Lost Boys.
Paul, Marco, uh, 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 Dwayne, and
Yeah.
David.
2. First vampire killed by the Frog Brothers.
Marco
Where?
in the cave.
Oh, damn it. 3. The name of the comic book that Sam Emerson was always looking for.
A Batman number 14. Is that right? Is that right?
It is right. Yeah, it is right. Like you waiting for you to be tripped up. The name of the Emerson family dog.
Nanook.
The name of the vampire DJ from The Thirst.
Ooh, excellent, excellent. It's not the lead guy. It's not the blonde guy, right? It's the darker guy. Yeah,
Yes. Did I get you on one?
you got me on one. I can't remember his name. I can't remember the
I'll give you a
character's name.
hint. You probably get it once
Okay.
you get the hint. Twitter's new name.
X.
DJ X.
Wow, that was
Yeah.
his name, X.
Last one. And I think we did answer this one as well. How was the head vampire in The Thirst killed? So the last kill of the film.
Yeah, he was killed. I mean, do we want to give it away? Is it right? I mean, people have seen it, right? He was killed with when Grandpa backed up with the truck and a stake slid out. One of the stakes that he was using in the garden slid out. Killed.
That's the end of The
Oh.
Lost Boys.
Oh! In the Thirst.
Thirst.
Oh, okay, sorry.
I'll go on. I'll give you another chance, I suppose.
Edgar Frog doused him with water. He was unconcerned being doused with water, but what he didn't realize is that Feldman had gotten himself become ordained as a minister. So he did a little prayer, turned it into holy water, and he burned up.
That's still one of the most sickening vampire kills I think I've seen. Like,
I
truly.
love that you're digging that because I agree. I think it was cool. Yeah, I thought that was cool.
Thank you so much for sitting and for being such a good sport.
Totally, it was great to talk to you. I love connecting with someone on a whole other continent.
It was trippy as all hell for me. Like I said, I've been watching your face every Halloween for like 15, 16 years. But
Totally.
yeah, absolute delight getting to speak to you. Thank you so much.
Happy Halloween to you and to everybody watching. Happy Halloween. Really great to talk to you. This was an awesome talk.
Thank you. It was lovely speaking with you too. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And that is it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, a big thank you to Jamison for sitting and talking, taking time out of his day. I will link his socials below, Instagram, Twitter, whatever he may be on. You know, one thing that struck me about this interview particularly was the discussion about the Frog Brothers. Jamison brought up that he and Corey, I think, had talked about a Frog Brothers, either a mini-series or a spin-off or something like that. So he brought up Cobra Kai, something along the lines of that kind of style of show. And I think it is perfect timing because we've seen a resurgence of 80s, 90s classics that everyone loves, but reimagined in some kind of way. I mean, Interview with the Vampire was made into a TV show. And of course, you had the Karate Kid kind of reimagined and modernized with Cobra Kai. So I think it would be a really, really good time for the Frog Brothers to do something, to have their own show. So yeah, if you've made it this long in the video, let me know what you guys think. Drop some love in the... I was going to say drop some love in the description. You can't do that. Drop some love in the comments. Let me know, would you guys be down for a Frog Brothers TV show? Because I am sure the boys would love to hear some positive feedback regarding that. I'm just imagining it like next Halloween or the Halloween after, because I don't know how long these things get to, be made. But just imagine if they did bring that out, like a vampire hunting TV show. And it was kind of camp, kind of fun, kind of goofy, but like serious and scary at the same time, like The Lost Boys. I think there's a gap in the market for something like that. I think that would be really, really cool. And yeah, make sure you keep your eyes peeled on my channel and on Instagram, because I'll probably be teasing it on Instagram. There's going to be more guests talking all about their projects over the upcoming days or weeks. To be perfectly honest with you, as I'm recording this, I don't know the upload schedule just yet, because I am about to film my 3rd interview. So I'm not giving anything away. But keep your eyes peeled, because there's going to be more guests over the month of October talking about all things Halloween and horror. And I can't wait. But yeah, thanks again for watching, you guys. Like I said, everything that you may need is linked in the description down below. and I will talk to you all soon.